Good evening, everybody. I reconvene this meeting at 6:39. The board is returning to public session after having held an executive session where the employment history of a particular person and collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law were discussed. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? The flag is beautiful. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you would all please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Just have a quick emergency evacuation announcement. Upon activation of a fire alarm, immediate evacuation to the closest emergency exit is required. The emergency exits and assembly areas are located. The emergency exits are in the back and assembly outside across the parking lot. Please exit away from the building so not to interfere with the fire department and proceed to the evacuation areas. Please follow the directions of school officials. Once outside the building, everyone must wait until an all clear is given by a school official before re-entering the building. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Anastasia Gonzalez.
Here.
Donald King.
Here.
Michael G. Video.
Here.
James F. McKenna.
Here.
Jacqueline Robinson.
Here.
Sue P. Sherwood Dudley.
Here.
And Charles A. Snyder.
Here. Have there been any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, personnel items 13.02A through H added to the agenda, and consent agenda items 11.10 through 11.13 have been removed.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on Tuesday, October 8th at 6:30 p.m. here in the Intermediate School Music Room, and it will be a regular meeting. An enrollment update presentation will be on the agenda. The college admissions workshop will be held at the high school on Wednesday, September 8th at 6:30 p.m. in the SHS band room. For more information, please see the online calendar. The Intermediate School Open House will be held on Thursday, September 19th at 6:30 p.m.
Excuse me.
Yes,
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Okay, so open house at the Intermediate School is at 6 o'clock on Thursday. The financial aid workshop will be held at the high school on Thursday, September 25th at 6:30 in the planetarium. For more information, please see the online calendar. There will be early dismissal for the purpose of professional development on Friday, September 27th. And there will be no school on Monday, September 30th and Tuesday, October 1st in observance of Rosh Hashanah. Tonight, I'm so glad to see so many people out in the audience, and we have a packed agenda. While I was reviewing the agenda, thinking maybe we should move some things around to keep our meetings to an hour, which we've been doing pretty good at. I realize that the topics are all very important, and I didn't want to delay them for discussion. I realize all of my fellow board members and administrations have busy lives, and I thank you all for your valuable time. Dr. Dino and I will do our best to keep things moving along. That being said, Dr. Dino, would you like to introduce our first presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Actually, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Zahn, who has our first two program presentations that he's going to present. He's going to start with a very happy presentation, which is something that we've been excited about since we learned of it last spring. I'm going to let Dr. Zahn explain to you.
Thank you, Dr. Dino, and thank you to all of the parents and students that are here this evening. So today we have some great news and a really great opportunity for some of our students that are enrolled in our vocational programs through Eastern Suffolk BOCES, which we collaborate with. Before we move forward in that, I know that some of you are enrolled in our new carpentry program here at the high school with Mr. Benny Diaz. Mr. Diaz really wanted to be here this evening, but his wife is delivering their third child tomorrow morning. So I told him he is not allowed to be here. And certainly he has to be home taking care of his wife for tomorrow morning. So he really, again, just wanted to be here for the students and wanted to send his congratulations and was looking forward to them. We wish Mr. Diaz and his family all the best tomorrow on the birth of his third daughter. So last year, we actually had a joint meeting with Hampton Bays School and representatives from the Southampton Business Alliance. The Southampton Business Alliance is a group that really makes up a lot of local businesses that you see between here, Southampton, Hampton Bays, and in our community. And they are very much supportive of our students that are seeking the education that they're getting in our career and vocational fields. What they have offered us, and particularly offered our students, is some incentives and great opportunity to continue their vocational work. And they're committed to the developing of skilled workforce within our community. And one of the things that they're doing to help us and to help our students is awarding scholarships to our students who are enrolled in various vocational programs. Because with the programs that they're enrolled in, there does come some costs for our kids. An example of that is for students that are in our carpentry program, where they have to purchase some sets of hand tools and other items. That's the same for students that are enrolled in our electrical trade programs, HVAC programs, and others. So I am pleased to announce that the Southampton Business Alliance, who partnered with Southampton at West Hampton Beach and Hampton Bays, is now fulfilling their promise of awarding some of those scholarships to our students. So I'd like to recognize our students that are enrolled in these programs and present you with a check for $250, which will help you purchase some of the materials that you need to help you be successful in some of the programs that you're enrolled in. So I will be calling up student names and introducing you to the Board of Education members, to our students, and presenting you and your families with this check of $250 that can be used and should be used to purchase some of the materials you need in the vocational programs that you're in. And again, we are just super proud of you and the choices that you're making. Certainly, I can tell you from speaking with many of the students here that they are really, really happy with the programs that they're enrolled in. Many students that you'll be seeing are in second years of those programs. But again, we're just happy to partner with the Hampton Business Alliance to present you these scholarships. So please welcome up with me when I call your name, guys. Just please come on up and please stay here with me. Mateo Munoz. So Mateo is enrolled in our carpentry program here at Southampton High School. So he is in that 4-period BOCES class in the morning. So Mateo, here's your check for $250. Congratulations. Good job. I'd also like to welcome Jose Martinez Ochoa. Jose is enrolled in he's year 2 of our electrical trade and alternative energy program. So congratulations, Jose, great work. So Nicholas Gomez is involved in electrical trade. Nicholas Gomez, congratulations. Timmy Kaddish is enrolled in our carpentry program. So Timmy, come on down. And again, he works with Mr. Diaz in our 4-period BOCES carpentry program here at Southampton High School. Timmy. And by the way, I believe I did pass on to Dr. Dino. I'm not sure if the board saw some of the great things that our carpentry students are making already.
I was so excited, I sent the picture to the board 4 times.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. But that certainly is the work of our students here. Another student that's enrolled in our carpentry program and responsible for some of those pictures that you're seeing, Atticus Jack. So congratulations, Atticus. We also have Jacob Clifford. Jacob is enrolled in our electrical trade program. So Jacob. And last but certainly not least, we have Theo Eddy. So congratulations to Theo. Excellent. Theo, if I did not say, Theo is enrolled in our HVAC program. And I believe that is something that also runs in the family, correct? That is right. So following in some family tradition, great job, Theo. So again, I'd like to present all of our students that are in this program. And certainly we are really happy, proud, and excited about the progress that they are making. So great job. And certainly, I think some of the pictures that you've seen are just the very beginning of great things that are taking place. So great job, guys. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come out and spend some time with us. And certainly, we hope that this scholarship on behalf of the Hampton Business Alliance really helps out with your future endeavors and your career path. So great job. Excellent.
Yay!
Thank you. What a great thing that the Business Alliance has done for the school.
And students and families, you're welcome to stay if you like. We're going to hear about the AP and Regents scores, but you're also welcome to leave if you have other things you need to attend. It's up to you. We do thank you for coming.
If you had a buffet, we'd stay.
Well, Timmy can certainly build you the buffet table.
Before we do start the next presentation, I would like to remind the board, and Dr. Zahn, and any of our speakers, that I promised Ms. Ortiz when she's translating, that if we're speaking too quickly or if she can't hear us, she's going to raise her hand and motion to us if we need to slow it down or repeat something. Because the last couple of meetings, especially when the microphones weren't working, she was having a hard time being able to make sure our parents understand. So Ms. Ortiz, is that okay?
Great, thank you. And Tom, if you could just flip that to presentation mode for me. Excellent, thank you. Okay, so tonight I'm here to present on behalf of Southampton High School in terms of our Regents and Advanced Placement exam performance from this past year. The Regents exams that you're seeing, the Regents performance that you're seeing took place from the June 2019 Regents exams. This report does not include our August exams right now. So this is really looking at all students that went through the courses, took the exams June of 19. And the AP performance is from the exams that were administered last May of 19 as well. This presentation is available on the website. It's posted on Board Docs. So it definitely is very meaty. So I'm really going to try and highlight some important points for us, just so we're not spending, as we said, several hours. We can spend several hours on this presentation, but I promise I'll try and keep it as concise as possible. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is our Regents performance from 2019, and I'll just talk to some of the highlights. Some of the things that you'll see, I may not comment on at all, but the way that I presented this is you have the opportunity to look at several years of data for our Regents performance. So I included the number of students that sat for each exam. This includes students that were sitting for the first time and also students that were retaking the exams in June. We do have students that have to retake the exams for a number of reasons, or in some cases, students can choose to retake the exams if they want to boost performance as well. So all of that was captured in this performance. Then you're looking at the number of students that scored at the proficiency level, meaning passing 65 or above. And also we're looking at the students that received mastery performance. The mastery number, just for clarification, that is also part of proficiency levels, and so we're not separating them out. So the students that are in mastery were also represented in proficiency. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. The one piece that we did not include in here, but it's important to note, is that we have many students that have individualized educational plans, IEPs, that do qualify for safety nets, meaning that their proficiency rate is dropped from 65 to a 55. There are some schools that do report that in their proficiency numbers. I looked purely at the 65 proficiency number, and again, that's the number that we stuck to. But in terms of some of the students that did score, please note that we do have students that do qualify as passing and can earn a Regents diploma even if they hit that safety net of a 55. Those numbers are not represented. Okay. So taking a look at our algebra performance, and one thing to note that last year we did have all of our students sitting for that extended period algebra course. We have that. If you look at the 2019 numbers, I did pull out SIS because SIS does administer our Regents exam, algebra Regents exam. So I wanted you to take a look at what their numbers look like along with ours, because it is a high school exam. So we did have 88% proficiency, which was a nice increase that we saw. We even saw our mastery numbers go up a bit. When you look at the 8th graders that sat for that exam, we had 48 graders last year, 100% proficiency, which is fantastic, 35% mastery. One of the pieces that I did strip out for you also, and one of the things that we're interested in looking at, is how our freshman cohort did. Last year was the first time that many of our students in this freshman cohort went through some of the changes that we've made with our programming. In this case, looking at some of the extended time pieces as well. So when you look at our 128 students that took that exam, 97 of them were true freshmen. And looking at our true freshmen that sat for that exam, that means these students were not accelerated. In 8th grade, they sat in on their regular trajectory pathway. They took it in 9th grade. We had 97 students that took that exam. Of that, 94% of them passed with 14% proficiency. So they did outperform the rest of the cohort that was taking that exam. So, which was a nice job. Taking a look at our geometry numbers, and geometry, we know ever since the redesign of this exam has really been challenging for our students. We do have, I did again take a look and strip that out so you can see freshmen that were enrolled in that course at the 9th grade level. Traditionally, that's a 10th grade course for us, but we did have 43% of our freshmen take that, meaning that they sat in algebra in 8th grade. We had, of those students that did that, 100% of them passed, 60% mastery, so they did a fantastic job, definitely outperformed again when you look at the students that did take that in 10th grade up. Again, overall, taking that at a normal trajectory. So we had 110%. We did drop in proficiency for that, but comparatively speaking, although we don't have our comparative data yet, in speaking with many of my colleagues in the county, certainly we saw that number for everyone dip a bit. We were very competitive in Geo in 2018, and again, even though our performance dropped for proficiency, it's still a very competitive number in terms of how we compare to the county, and certainly we were very happy with that in some of the prelim data, comparative data that I have received. Again, nothing's official until it's released by BOCES. But again, we did see a nice trend in Geo. Algebra 2, important to note, this is now for the first time this year. All of our students are sitting in that extended period Algebra 2 section, meaning that everyone now has that lab section. When you look at our performance in Algebra 2 over the past couple of years, we've seen some great performance, great increases, not only in the proficiency and the mastery rates, but what's also very important to me is the number of kids that are taking that course. And certainly we want to see students enrolled in the course, because that is an essential course for all students that are striving for an advanced Regents diploma. And that's very important. We've seen our advanced Regents diploma numbers increase, and certainly we want to make sure that we continue on that trend. So we've seen a nice healthy number of students accessing Algebra 2, and our performance and mastery rates comparatively are very, very good. So looking at living environment, again, here's another case where students can access that course, a high school level course in 8th grade. So I did pull out some of that data for you. We had a whopping 84 students take that course and that exam in the intermediate school last year, which is fantastic. And really happy to say that 95% of that cohort passed that exam with a 38% mastery rate, which is fantastic. When you look at the high school numbers, we had 83 students. Now, so everyone understands with our trajectory and how that works, students that are sitting in living environment in 9th grade at the high school means that they took a traditional grade 8 science, or they could have been also retakes or upperclassmen that were retaking the exam for graduation requirement. So that was 83 students with an 83% proficiency rate and 12% mastery. When you look at our freshman cohort of 63 students, again, that could come from the remaining numbers of students from the intermediate school, from Tuckahoe, OLH, and some other places. We had an 87% proficiency with a 14% mastery. So chemistry, we did see a dip in our enrollment, and that's something that certainly we're paying attention to. You know, I am a big advocate of students really staying involved in lab-based sciences for at least 3 years.
Just interrupt you for a second. One of the board members had a question. I want to make sure you answer the question.
Sure.
Tuckahoe accelerates in eighth grade, earth science in
Correct.
8th grade.
Where
Right, but so they would come to us and they would take living.
they would take living. Correct. That's why that number is, and I should have clarified that. I'm sorry, but that's why that number is pretty high, because you have Tuckahoe. If I said something differently,
No, you didn't. I just wanted.
Okay. But Tuckahoe does take that, their students, when they advance in 8th grade, they're taking earth science. And that's purely not because they want to do something different from us. It's purely a certification issue in terms of the teacher that they have that's available to teach that course. So we've been speaking, myself and Ms. Sakari, Mrs. Skudovic, over there in terms of this is something, of course, we want to be on the same page, but again, certification sometimes really kind of corners you to what you can offer. We have the flexibility, being that with big school, we have the flexibility of flipping our offering from earth to living environment. I can tell you if Tuckahoe is able to, they certainly want to do that as well. So you never know, maybe sometime in the future, hopefully we might be able to accomplish that. Okay, looking at earth science. So earth science, again, we did have students that access to earth science in 9th grade, so we had freshmen that were then sitting in earth science. When we look at our performance, we had 90% of our freshmen sitting in earth science were proficient with a 53% mastery rate. When you look at our overall performance, we were at 77%. So that means that our true freshmen were coming in and outperforming even some of our upper class students that were sitting in that class and taking that class as well. Physics is certainly something even when we look at our AP numbers, I think we're really, really happy about. Number one, the enrollment in our physics classes is on the move and going in the right direction. It's even bigger this year. When you look at our performance in terms of proficiency and mastery, although it looks like a small little bump and we're kind of hovering around that same spot, again, it is pretty competitive in terms of some of the physics numbers that we're seeing around the county, and certainly we'd like to see our mastery numbers increase. And I can tell you that Mr. Coluccio, I have certainly a lot of confidence in him. You'll see some of the differences in performance even with our AP numbers there when we get there. We've always performed very, very well in Common Core English. Again, that's no surprise. What we're seeing this year, over 90% of our students passing that and proficient in there with a whopping 58% mastery number. That mastery number is very, very high in terms of, so we're really, really proud of that. When you typically look at mastery numbers, on average, depending on the sections, you're seeing mastery numbers anywhere around that range from 30 to 40%. So we're up at 58%, which is really good. This is one that I certainly want to speak about, one that we're paying attention to is in terms of the performance of our performance in U.S. history. We've definitely seen a dip in our performance over the past 2 years in terms of proficiency and mastery. One thing that we are doing is we know that we've gone through a lot of work with our social studies curriculum design. Again, a lot of the work that we're doing in social studies has really centered on the new framework. We're still on the old existing standards for this exam. Last year was the last year of that exam. This year we'll have 2 opportunities. We'll have a new framework U.S. history exam, which you'll see I'll speak about in a moment, as we saw global studies. And we also have the old framework. So generally our practice is that when the state does this and implements new exams, we have our students sit for both of those exams. Gives them 2 opportunities to pass. And again, you'll see some differences with that when we get to global studies. But U.S. history is certainly an area of I would say, it's of concern because when you look at the proficiency levels across the county, they're much higher than we are performing currently right now. So that's something that we're paying attention to, and certainly we're hoping that we're going to see a big improvement, as we will see with global studies in a moment. But that's an area that we are absolutely paying attention to, an area that frankly we can do much better in. In global studies, right now what you're seeing here is what I'm showing you is the old standards, the exam from the old standards. Last year, students had 2 opportunities to take our global studies Regents exam. So they had the old standards, which our teachers were not teaching to. They were teaching to the new standards, new framework. So we had, and again, it's no surprise, we documented this and you've heard us speak about this. We struggle in this area in terms of global studies, particularly on an old exam. We're struggling with our proficiency, we're struggling with our mastery rates. And that is the last time, thank goodness, we've been seeing that exam. When we look at our performance and compare it to the new framework, you see a major jump. Whereas in the old framework, 63%, those same students were up to 83% proficiency on the new framework. So definitely a big improvement there. And also you saw that with the mastery rates as well. Although our mastery rate is not as high, our proficiency rate, our ability to get students to pass that exam, which has just been a thorn in our side for some time, we're seeing a really good positive trend there. But certainly something that we continue to work on. With that wraps up our Regents exam performance. Before I move into AP, would you like me to continue into AP?
No, I'd like you to stop and see if there's any questions about Regents before I get to AP.
Anybody have any questions?
No.
Go ahead, Mr. McKenna.
I know this is the year that we are looking at the math program in the district, but I'm not going to be judgmental here tonight. I just want to present my view of the world. First of all, this is the first year, Dr. Zahn, that students in 8th grade through high school were receiving an additional 50% more time in math.
For all courses, yes, for all courses now. This is the first year for LH2. So that was the last one that we had to add on.
So my only point would be, if you look at your statistics, the needle didn't really move. So, and I didn't know whether it would or not. I mean, you've heard me for several years here with Dr. Zagato say, when does the rubber hit the road? When are we actually going to see something? But with 50% more time, we didn't see the needle.
We saw it in ALGE 1, we did not see it in GA.
So let me just give you just dropping back and looking at the numbers very quickly. The reason for the whole Common Core math program was that there was a decade of statistical analysis that said if a student didn't receive an 85 on the algebra regents, there's a good chance that that student would be in one of these non-credit bearing classes when they get to college.
From senior year of college, right?
So if you look at our algebra results, again, just clarify for me, what does a freshman cohort mean? What does that mean? That's the freshmen
That is.
who were taking algebra. That does not include the 8th grade algebra because they're going to be in the geometry.
Correct,
So
so that
97 of the 128 students.
were students that were taking Algebra 1 for the first time at that point.
Which have the 8th graders, where's that slide? That slide? So you have the 8th graders as well. That's the answer.
So the students that were in 8th grade taking it for the first time were the students from SIS, 40 of them, 100% mastery, 100% proficiency, 35% mastery. Okay, those were 8th graders taking that last year.
But they're not in the freshman cohort because they're going to be in the geometry on the next slide.
They're on the next slide, that's correct.
But again, so my point would be that if only 14% of our 9th graders taking algebra for the first time received their mastery grade, tying into what I just said, then 85% of our students could be in danger when they go to college of taking a non-credit bearing math class. It's just,
If those.
it's an opinion, it's not even a fact, it's just an
Correct.
observation.
Correct.
Let's go then to, well, let's look at that, continue to look at that for a second, because that means, let's look at the 48th graders that are taking algebra. So only 1 in 3, a little better than 1 in 3 of them received a mastery grade on that as an accelerated class.
Correct.
Accelerated means it's being given a year in advance, not an honors class, but an accelerated class.
Correct.
So that's troublesome to me. That's very troublesome to me, because once again, if you don't have an 85 on that test, what does that tell you about where they're going to be when they go to college? So,
But they did better than the freshmen, as a group, right?
of course they did.
They
But
did.
the point of the matter is that there's still only 13 of those kids, 14 of those kids in the 8th grade received an 85 on that Regents, with the projection then that they could be in trouble when they take math when they get to college. It's just, it's an observation that we need to be aware of. Then you go on and you go to the next slide, or you look at the geometry results. So 60% of the accelerated students received an 85 or better. But the reality is that that's troublesome too. And the only reason I find that troublesome, because if we go to the next slide, you've heard me say now for several years that the scores that you get on the trig Regents
Are very much correlated.
to how well you're going to do in college. And I'm just not with seeing where we're making progress in those areas. Again, we've only had the additional time for 1 year. I know that the teachers, I know I would have been struggling as to how to use that most productively, so I'm not passing any judgments here. But this is the year where we're going to be looking at math. And somehow, someplace, sooner or later, these numbers have to begin to move. We're just not doing it right. I'll speak to John when the time comes, when I'm on the Senate floor, and I said to Dr. Dino, he and I said we'll get together, but math is my subject. I know statistics, and these are troublesome.
Well, thank you. I don't know if we should hang our hat just on that one study. That's what I worry about, because I like to see that there are numbers that are increasing and who's taking it. But anything that surprised you in the whole overall of
US
what you
history.
saw? US history surprised you?
Surprised me greatly. Only because again, that's an exam that traditionally, when you have your social studies Regents exams, that students usually perform much better on. So that one surprised me.
What do you think?
In terms of even the work that we're doing with US history.
So what do you think? What was the reason for that?
Again, I think also It could have been that our teachers or our teacher was teaching to some of the new standards and the new curriculum work, which is not necessarily measured on the old exam, but measured on the new exam. Hence, you saw that with global studies, why there was a difference in performance there. But certainly, you know, our social studies, I'm going to be honest, our social studies performance is still one that if you're asking me which one keeps me up at night, that's the one.
But if I could just add, for U.S. history, we pulled a master teacher out of the classroom and have a brand new teacher in there too. So I think the teacher's experience also plays a role in that.
Yes.
Yeah, I just think so. But to Mr. McKenna's point, and really truly respect that. But going back to algebra, Tom, could you pull up that algebra slide? I too understand exactly what you're saying, but what I see it is looking at it from a big picture point. Is I see from 2017 and 18, and we had 3% and 5% mastery. That with the extended time, we've been able to increase that up to 11% overall for all students and 14% for the freshmen. To me, that's an improvement.
Correct. Yeah. I think also one of the other data points that we can't look at yet, but one that will be very important to look at in time, just because of the cohort's not there yet, is looking at our ACT and SAT performance. I think that's one that we've been speaking about, you know, certainly looking at, I have those numbers this year, but we wouldn't be talking about students that have benefited from some of the changes that we've made yet. So it really wouldn't be good data to base some of the changes on. But that's another data point that in time we want to certainly take a look at.
So I always find it very, very troubling to hear that because we take a master teacher out of the classroom and put a new teacher in, the children's work suffers. I don't ever want to hear that because we change the curriculum, the kids are going to do poorly. That is, like the hair on my neck is standing up because it just is unacceptable. If the teacher can't teach the content, then maybe the teacher shouldn't be teaching the content. So what do you expect to see with next year's scores? Where do you, with the added time?
In terms of, are you asking me in terms of math or social studies? Which discipline are we talking about?
Well, we'll go with math, but overall.
Yeah. So in speaking with math, again, it was our first year through the extended time. I think over the course of the year, our teachers got much better at the use of the instructional time in how they have crafted that block. I think certainly there were growing pains with that block, as Mr. McKenna alluded to, from my just, you know, empirical, from my, I guess, informal observations. We've seen better use of that time over the course of the year. I think in terms of how teachers were executing their plans and what they were doing in that time, I think certainly that will help. So I anticipate that will help with our math performance. I think in terms of social studies, again, this is one that, you know, we need to move the needle in social studies. If there's one that we ever need to move, it is social studies. We saw a positive trend with the new exam, with the new framework global. I certainly anticipate and expect that with the work we've been doing in social studies over the past 2 years, with the new framework now hitting us this year, I would be floored and shocked if I don't see a massive improvement in that area.
Any questions from anybody else? All right, well, thank you, Dr. Zong. And you said this is available online for
It is
on the website?
posted on the website, on Word docs.
We're not done yet. We have
Sorry.
a portion.
Not done yet. There's a lot more of me tonight. Okay, so let's take a look at our AP performance. And again, this was from our May 19 exams. Now, very different in terms of some of the things that we have to look at and the way that it's set up. Again, we have the number of students that sat in the course, and we do have a practice here in Southampton, whereas if you are sitting in the course, you're also enrolled and you must take the corresponding AP exam. For those students that do not take that exam, they do not receive final AP credit on a transcript. So again, you're enrolled in the course, you have to take the exam. That's important to note because there are many schools out there that do not have that requirement. So again, it's important to look at when you're doing some comparative data and schools are boasting some of their performance. You know, one thing, the first question you have to ask is, do students have to sit? All students have to sit. that exam. So, and also what's the level of reporting?
So you're saying that the schools allow students to
Take
be in
these
the course,
without taking the exam. That's
but why would they do that?
I think there are many students, or many schools that would say, okay, there's students in the exam, you're not projected to do well, you're not projected to do well, don't take the course. So it's a way of gaining numbers and boosting performance. So for the school, it's done. The good thing is why we believe that it's so important for students to take that exam, because again, I think it does show us how students, what they learn over the course of the exam. And again, there's a no harm, no foul policy in APs. You do not have to share your scores with colleges in those applications. You do well, we encourage you to share them during your application process. You do not do well, don't share them. So it's a little bit of a no harm, no foul policy. And on top of that, we're paying for up to 2 exams. So that's important too, to recognize one of the few schools that are doing that. And certainly, I think that we've seen in terms of the students that are accessing AP, we're seeing a little bit more diversity in our AP classrooms, which I think is very, very important.
Can I ask you, what is an exam cost today?
The exam without any sort of fee reduction is $92 per exam. With fee reduction from the state, with the state fee reduction down to $52 per exam. And that price holds this year. We did receive notification that's still there, holding at $92 per exam. When you look at AP Calc, certainly again, Dr. Dino just spoke about efficacy of the teacher in there. We have a teacher that was teaching the course for the first time. We always had, for a long time, a teacher that taught it retired. We had a teacher take over that left for an administrative position, and now we have a new teacher in the second year. And really, we tapped that teacher pretty late in terms of having him teach that exam, and he rolled up his sleeves and worked really hard. And when you look at our passing, and I'm sorry, just to go back, when you look at the way that this is set up, AP exams are scored on a level of 1 through 5. We say, and College Board says, and they look at states, and you look at students that receive a 3 or higher as your proficiency in that exam. Scoring a 3 is great, scoring a 4 is really good, scoring a 5 is amazing. But we're looking at our quote-unquote proficiency at 3 and above there. You also want to take a look at the average and the mean score, so that's also important too. That we're looking at the averages, mean scores. I'm sorry that I had two different, I wrote it as average on the top and mean score on the bottom. We're talking about the same thing. I apologize that I had two, I don't know why I did that, but just seeing that now. But when you look at our performance, it's also important to look at how the state performed and how students performed globally. That's how you want to really compare our students to others. So even though we had a teacher that was going through this for the first time without any sort of AP training, again, when you look at his mean score, his average was very competitive. He was on par with New York State and globally, and he was right there with his proficiency as well, and our students were right there. So again, we anticipate that we're going to see these numbers increase as time goes on. So, but again, this ties into some of the conversation that we spoke about, and spoke about in terms of projecting students that will access your calculus curriculum and be successful in there. So, looking at AP Bio, our kids did amazing. Our teacher did amazing. Our kids did amazing. When you look at our 3 and above, 95% of the students that took that exam scored a 3 or higher. When you look at our comparative data, you're talking about across the state and globally, the average was anywhere from 65 to 68%. We had 95%. And our mean scores our students were earning way outperformed the state and our global numbers. So fantastic job.
Yeah, but our numbers are decreasing, huh?
What's that?
The number of kids that are.
The number of kids, but again, I wouldn't look too much at that. I think that's more in terms of there's only so many places that kids can access, and we're offering so many different things. And I think that also has a piece of it. Remember, this is a double period block class. This takes 2 periods of your day up. So again, students are, have to make some tough choices in some of the courses that they're going. There's still a lot of interest in the course. Yes, certainly We did see a decrease in some of those numbers, but again, I think it really comes down to some of the choices that our kids have to make and some of the courses that they can take. The double period block can only fit so many ways in your schedule.
Can I just ask one question about the time? Looking at the number of students, are the amount of students per grade, have they changed?
Have they changed?
So
So generally,
like, say, the class that had 26, was there many more students in that group?
in that cohort was hovering, just if my numbers are correct, that's still around a 150 to 160 cohort. So that's not, there wasn't a dip in that cohort. There's a dip in our freshman cohort, but not in our last year's 10th, 11th, and 12th. Computer science principles is really, we offer this as a dually enrolled program. We follow the Project Lead the Way curriculum. But with that curriculum, we are allowed to have our students sit for AP exams. So that's something that we've done. Certainly, you can see that we're still not at a place, although our students are performing very well on the Project Lead the Way exams. When they sat for the AP exam, there's certainly some differences in curriculum that our teacher is taking a look at to maintain, to ensure that our student performance on this exam does raise and is a bit more competitive. But again, these same students that were sitting in computer science principals that take our Project Lead the Way course and exams were performing really, really well on that. But certainly there's some room for improvement. Again, not following the AP syllabus on this, we're following the Project Lead the Way computer science principal syllabus. In terms of AP Environmental Science, we saw a big boost from the past 2 years in the enrollment. And here's again where we say, this is a choice for students that make. You can take AP Bio, you can take AP Environmental, you can take AP Physics, you can take, and again, we're seeing some enrollment move into AP Environmental Science, which we call APES. When you look at the performance overall, again, don't just look at the year-to-year, 3-year average. That changes dramatically in terms of your comparative data from year to year. So when you look at how we did comparatively, although you see 51% of our students had a 3 or higher, when you look at that comparatively across the state and globally, we outperformed the state and students who were taking that globally, as did our mean scores as well. So that's important to look at, just because the AP cut points change so dramatically from year to year. Looking at Physics 1, and again, this was one where our teacher was certainly very hungry when he was not satisfied his first year going through AP Physics, and again, hired pretty late, did not get a chance to go through any sort of formal AP training his first year, 2018, went through it last year, and if you look at our results, our students that were enrolled in the program are really sort of boosting performance, and again, comparatively speaking, we're doing very, very well with that. So we were really happy. Comparatively, I mean, over a 10% difference in our performance compared to the state and globally. So really, really good. That was a big increase. And also happy to report that we've doubled the number of students enrolled in that course this year. So that's big.
Is that a double period as well?
That's a double period as well. That's a double period lab-based science course as well. Looking at English language comp, which is our 11th graders sat in that course last year, traditionally 11th grade course. Again, 49 students, comparatively speaking, in English language. We did outperform the state. We did outperform students that were taking that globally. Our mean score was very healthy as well. So again, students that sat in this course, we would traditionally do well in this course. And again, we're seeing that in terms of our performance, comparative performance here. Same thing goes with English Lit. We had a new teacher take over that course for the first time and kind of just like a duck to water. Certainly did very, very well. Comparatively speaking, we outperformed the state, outperformed students taking that globally. We had a nice healthy mean score compared to some of the others, but again, very, very well in terms of comparatively speaking from the state and global scores. This is one that certainly just absolutely I can't wrap my head around because we do so well in our AP Social Studies courses in terms of the U.S. history course and our senior course. And that doesn't translate, for some reason, we're seeing different things on the Regents exams. But again, our teacher that's been in there has been in the course for some time. And when you look at our performance here, massive difference between our students and students who are taking that across the state and globally. Really strong performance here from our students and our teachers. So certainly really happy to report that over 77% with 3 or higher. Looking at the mean, it's a huge difference for our students. So again, really great job on that. And seniors also, the government and politics, again, a big difference. You see a major overperformance. Again, you have 58% of students in the state getting 3 or higher. Our students, 83%. So just a tremendous difference in terms of our performance there. These were our seniors. And sometimes I can tell you from trying to herd seniors and have them finish strong, man, oh man, they did. So kudos to our students there, our seniors that graduated last year, and our teacher. Again, you've heard us speak about this course in particular. It aligns with our performance in global history. Last time that we're offering this course, and that exam was in 2019, and you can see one of the reasons why. Traditionally, it's a place where we underperformed in this course, and again, that trend certainly held true. We were down 5% less from the state. Performed a little higher globally than the students that took that globally. When you look at our mean score, that between us and students who took that globally was about the same, but certainly underperformed the state. And again, not to get into that conversation, we've been well documented with that in terms. But that exam now sunsets, as we will not be offering that course and exam any longer. AP psychology is one that I just want to talk about because again, we've seen some underperformance in that, comparatively speaking, with the state and global. But I think it's very important to state on this exam. This is one course that we really push students who traditionally would not be your AP type students to really try and access an AP course to really get that experience. And the reason that we do that is because unlike many of our other courses that we offer, those AP courses supplant some of the Regents courses that you have to take. This is a course where it's not tied to your core curriculum. It's actually a true elective. So it gives students the ability to take that course. It's not tied to any sort of graduation pathways or anything like that. It's a place where students can really try and stretch themselves. We encourage that. We certainly see healthy numbers in our course. This year, even our enrollment is much higher than 36 students that sat in that course last year. And it's a place where students can feel safe about trying an AP course and doing well. But you do see that we see some of that, the result of that with our performance. But I think it's important to note that these, in many cases, are not your traditional AP students that are in this class. We're really encouraging students to try this class out to get that experience, that AP experience.
And again, Brian, if I could just add to that, this is what we wanted. We wanted this course to be for your non-traditional AP student. We wanted someone to have a college experience, even though they might not have thought they could handle APs in high school, which is why we wanted this standalone course that didn't require foundational knowledge in another area, just as Brian said, a true elective that students could learn college strategies and apply it towards a new subject. And so the fact that the numbers are healthy in enrollment makes me very happy.
Taking a look at AP Spanish language, so this is a course that we would have our dual language / ESA students take in 11th grade, but you also have students that may not have been in that program accessing that, and typically that's in 12th grade. Excuse me. But again, we performed very, very well in AP Spanish language. Certainly seeing big growth from when we first started tracking this back long before 2015, where we weren't overly performing well, but we saw big increases in that with our cohorts, our ESA cohorts and new language cohorts coming up. Again, you can see that comparatively speaking, we outperform the state and even students who are taking that across the globe. So again, a very strong area for us. One that is still baffling me now is the dip in performance we saw in AP Spanish Lit. AP Spanish Lit is taken in senior year by our ESA students. And this one's very interesting to me because we saw a difference in terms of the AP Spanish Lit numbers performance compared to even our DELE scores. Now, again, I know they're measuring two very different things, but we had, once again, some really nice DELE performance. Yet in AP Spanish Lit, we took a significant drop, and even when you look at the performance of that, of our students compared to the state and globally, I'm not yet able to put my finger on why this happened. I'm hoping that this was something that was just a blip and atypical, because again, you have our ESA students sitting in this course, and in some cases, we do have native Spanish speakers sitting in this course. We performed very, very strong last year in terms of our performance, and took a major turn for some reason that we're really trying to look at and peel back the onion and figure out why that happened. But certainly, once we have a better understanding of some of that, why this may have occurred, I'll certainly share that out. But absolutely, to this day, I'm still kind of baffled on that. And my note, I still have a question mark because I haven't been able to pinpoint that for us. So I'm hoping that it's just more of an anomaly than a trend. And lastly, always happy to present our AP Scholars. This year alone, we had a total of 65 AP Scholars. Just to let you know, our enrollment last year was approximately 650 students. We had 197 of that 650 accessing at least one AP course, which is something that's really, really exciting and great to see. And when you look at that, of those students, of that 197, we had 65 AP Scholars. There are different levels of AP Scholars that we have. Our first, which is a AP Scholar, which means that a student has a 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams. So again, we're talking about upperclassmen here. This is our 10th graders did not qualify last year because they were only sitting in one AP exam. Generally, you'd see that we had last year's 11th and 12th graders that make up these numbers. So we have 30 students that received a 3 or more on 3 AP exams over their time that they've taken those exams. AP Scholar with honors, meaning a 3.25 on all exams taken, with a mean average score of 3 or higher on 4 or more exams, 16 of those students. An AP Scholar with distinction, which means that they had an average score of a 3.5 on all exams taken, a 3 or higher on 5 or more AP exams, and we had 19 of those students. So the last was the AP International Diploma, which is a score of 3 or higher on 5 or more exams in 3 or more different subject areas. We did not qualify for that, and we'll take a look at that live. But I just believe that's more of because we can't offer the number of AP exams that are there. Generally, we're too small of a school. We offer, I believe, it's 11 up to 12 AP exams. We would have to offer way more than that for students who really kind of qualify for something like that. With that, I will take any questions on AP performance at this time.
One quick question, the Spanish literature, was it the same teacher?
So Spanish Lit is taught by the same 2 teachers. They co-teach that class. So, and this is their second, third year teaching that class together.
So hopefully it's just a blip, like you said.
Yeah. Again, I
It's
wish
not
I
an easy
could.
course, this isn't an excuse,
No.
but it's authentic Spanish literature, deep literature that students have to really analyze these readings, in Spanish.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
In Spanish.
Does anybody else have a question?
I have a quick question. You referenced AP training. What AP training do our teachers get?
Correct. Yep, so typically AP teachers will go through an AP Summer Institute. Any teacher that's teaching an AP course for the first time, we want them, we certainly enroll them in that AP Summer Institute. We also have teachers do that as a refresher. So if teachers come to me and they want a refresher, or I go to a teacher and they're interested in doing that, that's certainly something we enroll them in. So that's one form. Another form is College Board does put out different mini sessions throughout the year, different webinars. So we'll enroll our teachers in those. So it's a College Board-based training, specific training on the course. And usually those are offered typically in the summer because they last usually a full week.
They're digital or they're in person?
In person.
Oh, okay.
Whenever we see them on Long Island or even for
Yeah.
the city,
We send.
of course, we offer to try to send them.
Got it,
We
got
send,
it.
look, we've sent people out of state for the training. In rare cases, we'll do the online training only when we have to. And for an example of that was the first year when Mr. Coluccio came in, he was hired long after all the AP trainings were done, summer institutes were done. I think he was hired a couple of days before school. We gave him an AP webinar training. Again, you're talking a 2-hour webinar compared to a 5-day in-person experience. Can't be managed.
And as far as the AP site, 3 out of the 5 of my children have taken it, love it. I mean, the kids
a great
definitely
course.
love it, and
Great
there's
course.
great interest in it. Is there anything we can do to sort of support them to try to get the 3 or more, only because then they'll get some credit in college if they choose to,
So
I just worry about
Yeah.
that. That's the only.
one of the things that we did is there was a time and even discussion where we were thinking that students before they take that course should have a prereq of psychology. We offer a general psychology just to give a base kind of knowledge, but we steered away from that again. We didn't want to prevent students from accessing the course. I'm not sure if that also would be an answer. Again, we hear from Susie Pepperons in terms of acceleration and front loading. I guess that would be a way of front loading information, getting students used to some of the language and the readings that they're going to be taking. But again, do we want to add a prereq to that course?
No, because you really have
Because
the
then you're boxing
interest.
some kids out who couldn't figure it
Yeah.
out for it.
I mean, I don't know what the answer is, I just hope that they did go through the whole course, at the end, if they could get a credit, let's say. So, great work.
But again, even without the credit, they've learned
Yes, the skills,
the manner in
absolutely.
which they have to behave in the college course. I mean,
Right.
Right.
So I
Just the pacing of the course alone and the readings that they're responsible for, and a lot of the
Absolutely.
experiences in the work is
Absolutely.
beneficial.
Mr. McKenna?
Yeah, again, thank you, Dr. Zahn, for a comprehensive presentation. Again, I'm not so concerned about the numbers of students that are getting 3s or better in the AP classes as maybe some people might be. When you start looking at statistics, you can make them say anything you want, right? I happen to think that what I think that you have done, or the high school has done, that was the whole discussion 2 years ago, was being able to kind of balance the playing field in the earlier years. So I would hope that your number of students sitting in some AP class, whichever one it might be, will increase. And it would seem, wouldn't be surprised if at that point you saw some of your scores decrease.
Correct.
That, so you're not going to get anybody saying, for me, you're not going to say, well, why, how did that happen, okay? A couple of clarifying questions if I could. The AP US history, the AP
Correct, AP US history.
US history, do they take the regions?
They do, they have to sit for that Regents.
Okay.
So they are not taking your Regents-based US history class. They're sitting the AP course, taking the AP exam, and then also sitting for that corresponding Regents.
Once again, I don't think I'd lay awake at night worrying about social studies in the years to come. I think that what we've done in the district in the last 2 years with the social studies revision in the curriculum and the equal opportunity for all students to take the 9th grade program and then the 10th grade program, I think you will see in a year or two, those numbers will begin to play itself out when you look at the Regents exams and possibly even with the history. So I don't think I'd lay awake at night worrying about that, okay? Another thing that we looked at, I'm not gonna ask you to do it now, but I know you did it a couple years ago, is you broke down the AP scores into the different categories, socioeconomics, ethnicities, we kind of knew where that fell.
Correct.
So again, I'd be kind of curious to see, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, let's say, it does not surprise me that your AP US history scores are out of the park. But it was a very selective group of kids. right? We had an honors 9th grade, an honors 10th grade, and then they went, you better get a score when you get to AP with history. So we've kind of blended that a little bit. I'd be really curious to see how that plays out in a couple of years. And just one last thing, I'd be looking at the ball this year in terms of calculus. Now this is I'm just dropping back and making an observation. I'm not a betting man, but I'd be curious, real curious to see how this plays itself out. One of the reasons that I felt very strongly that the additional time in math was something that you should consider. Let's go back just for a second to the math scores, was that it was when, and again, I'll leave the teacher's name out, but when we had a discussion about the trig regions and the number of students that were getting a mastery grade 2 years ago was pretty low. If I remember, here it is, it was 11%. And that number jumped last year to 38%. And this year it's sitting statistically the same at 34%. So with a better group of kids performing,
Correct.
they sat last year in pre-calculus. They will be in calculus this year. I bet that you're going to see those numbers come up. Just that's an observation. Good job.
And I will buy a cup of coffee if that happens.
Can I just add an aside? I went to back to school night at the high school, and it was just so nice to see the variety of classes that we offer, the master teachers that we have, the teachers who are excited for everything that they offer. It just made me so proud to be part of this district, and really, Brian, you're doing a great job leading the high school, and Nick, with your vision of just giving so many opportunities and such a variety of offerings in Southampton, and it really just helps students find their way and fit into not necessarily all the AP classes, but maybe a sprinkling of those, along with all these other wonderful things that we celebrated tonight.
No, I appreciate that.
So impressed by the teachers and everybody.
And that's one thing to point out, and Mr. Buchanan, you just kind of touched on this a bit. One piece I did not really put in here is taking a look at our demographic trends over the past couple of years. We're looking at performance over time, but one thing that you should be looking at side by side that we get to see that, and certainly do, is just the changing demographic that we have. We know that our students that are at the poverty level, that number is increasing rapidly. We know that the number of students that we're serving that are coming into the country for the first time, or students with interrupted formal education, is increasing dramatically, yet our performance is still really, it's holding. And I think that's really important. That's great work on our teachers. Our teachers are working really, really hard between the curriculum work that they're doing, and certainly adapting to meet the needs of our very rapidly changing demographic. So that's certainly something that I just wanted to point out, that we're changing rapidly, and our teachers are doing a good job, really good job of adjusting to that and trying to meet the needs of our very diverse student body that we have. So.
And again, just to add to it, I think I agree with Anastasia wholeheartedly about the feeling of open house feeling. The other thing that I think that you've allowed that's set in place now is with teachers having this additional extra help period, or the variety of what they do during that 6th period, it gives teachers the opportunity to have that informal subject content area talk with kids in a way that's different with being in front of the classroom. And I think that's going to help bridge a lot of the items we're talking about to help students feel more I can and participate more in some higher level courses that they haven't been before. And also, I just wanted to make, when Brian talked about our number of side kids, but I think the addition of Mr. Diaz to our carpentry class, we could serve a couple of purposes by having a side kid participate in a building trades class, and we're accomplishing 2 of our things within the confines of a 9-period day that we need to accomplish that will help our students be better prepared when they leave us. So I'm really proud of what we're doing in this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any last questions? Mr. King?
And I think this is Mr. McKenna, and very valid points, I agree. I'm not disagreeing at all. I just wish the data was broken down a little bit finer, because when you start to think about the demographics and how it's changing our community, it's not reflected in here. being a little, not really thinking about that until you said it. I'm not aware of it, and I just, sometimes I think the data is too depressing. And I know you're trying to do a lot in the 20-minute period,
That's half,
but I
half
still
the
would love
battle.
to see how those differences, and because we're supposed to be, one of our goals is to, address the achievement gap. The only way we're gonna be able to see it is we start to look at that data. And, I don't know where we get it, but I think, and the only testing we really get to look at that's true is regents and the APs. Because in the lower grades, none of the people who are really taking, they're not getting good at statistical analysis.
But again, Mr. King, just with now our data dashboard, parents can see on an individual basis growth of their students through other measures.
But I mean, the board needs to see,
I understand. But
and that's all I'm saying, it just, sometimes it becomes too.
No, and that's a great point, Mr. King, and I can tell you that one thing, and certainly a valid point in terms of when I frame this out, and present in the future, maybe putting in, a demographic piece, just to kind of, give that, kind of basic knowledge that, to see what our demographic trends look like. The one piece I can definitely tell you is before, and I strongly believe, before you can attack an achievement gap, you have to attack an opportunity gap, and certainly that's what we've been doing specifically over these past 2 years, is really attacking that opportunity gap. And I think that is going to lead to really big returns for us.
Especially paying for 2 AP courses.
yes,
Every
Yes,
sense
that's-
of the offerings, paying for the AP exams, what we've done with even our freshman foundation and beyond, all of these things are chipping away at the opportunity gaps and preventing some of our students in various demographics to really kind of be held back or not perform up to their potential. And I think we'll see that, that will pay off.
And Mr. King, I'd just like to add, on October 8th, I am doing an enrollment report, which will show the changing demographics of the whole district as a whole. It's not tied to performance, but it'll show you who we were 10 years ago and who we are today, which is a big change.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to public comments. Anyone? Going once, going twice? Okay.
So maybe I should just stay up here.
I was gonna give you a little bit of break and go to my other item before we went to my other part, but why don't you have a seat right there and I'll get back to you.
Dr. Dino?
All right, I have a couple things for the board, and what Brian and I are going to talk about with Gene's help as well is the alternative program, but before I get to that, there were some other things I wanted to talk to you about. The first item has to do with polling places. As you know, you've probably read in the local newspaper as well as heard throughout the state that there's a big concern from superintendents and boards in many districts about the decision to allow the public into schools while schools are in session to come in to vote. We put all these measures in for security, and then we kind of throw them by the wayside in order for our schools to be used as polling sites. So a couple of things. A few years ago, we had an issue. This is not a new issue for us. A few years ago, we had an issue at the high school when primary day in June was the same day as the new Common Core Regents, and Dr. Zahn had no place to offer the testing. I'm sorry?
Even last year, that happened for a second time.
2 times. So the gym, which is part of the polling place, is also the area that's our testing center, if you will. So we had a big problem, and we fought with the county to allow us to not have the school as a polling place. We were not successful. What they allowed us to do is move it from the gymnasium to the cafeteria, which made it worse from a safety point of view, because now while kids were testing, we had strangers traipsing through different entrances of the building to get to where they wanted to vote, again, without going through our typical safety protocols that we typically use. So to me, that's not an answer. What I've prepared tonight, and what I've talked with our attorneys about, is we have a resolution in place, if you as the board would want to consider it, that takes formal action by the board to authorize me to have that conversation with our attorneys, and again, the polling people, the Board of Elections, to see if they will consider moving it off-site. We have a fire hall right down the road from us that wouldn't, deter the public from voting. They could head towards the same direction, but it wouldn't be in our schools. So I wanted to be able to offer them some suggestions about where it can be moved of course, I have to talk to the firehouse first. But you would give me the authority to have that conversation and try to press as hard as I can to have it moved from our schools.
I just want to comment about your fire, if I can. I don't think it's an ideal place to have a polling place, so I hope when you talk, you can come up. There are other places in our community to go.
Agreed, but I will tell you, one of the arguments they used with us for the last 2 years was the public are used to going to a certain place. They don't want to change it where it's going to take voters away from coming to the same. So they want something as close to the original polling place as possible.
Yeah, but it's the same, it's a safety issue that appears with, with alarms and that type of rapid response,
Okay,
and the parking, especially at the Hampton Road Firehouse.
okay.
Well,
But I
town
do-
hall is closed on election day.
What's that?
Town hall is closed.
No,
on
no, I
election
think
day.
there's other opportunities in our community. This subject is newly on the board in Stanford.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I think other places could be found to have.
I'll be voting when I get up to Rochester in October, but there's a proposal by the New York State School Boards, again, supporting, allowing boards to determine if the building should be used for polling places or not. So it's coming at them now in all directions. I think all the things that happened in the world are kind of bringing it to.
We spend so much money and time keeping our kids safe, and then we open the doors and say, come on in. And while I've never heard of any issues of people wandering the schools, why give them an extra opportunity to walk in? Our staff does a great job, but
So the resolution that was prepared, I'll just read it to you and then you can decide if it's something the board would like to consider. States, whereas pursuant to Education Law 4104, the Suffolk County Board of Elections has the authority to designate polling places in Suffolk County, including within the Southampton Union Free School District. And whereas the Suffolk County Board of Elections has annually designated polling places in buildings operated by the Southampton Union Free School District. And whereas the Board of Education of the Southampton Union Free School District is concerned that designating buildings used to house school children as polling places creates unnecessary safety risks. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby authorizes the superintendent of schools contact Suffolk County Board of Education to advocate for a change of polling places located within the Southampton Union Free School District and to urge the designation of locations which are not used to house school children.
So moved.
can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I just want to clarify, because I missed a copy of it. Is it board docs?
It's the board docs of the superintendent's report.
Yes.
There it is in one second.
That's what
It is, yes, on the back.
Nice.
This is super.
Third.
8.01. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Great, I will move on that tomorrow. The other item I wanted to talk to you about is immunizations. As you know, the law was passed where students are required to be at least undergoing the immunization process in order to be in school with us. The state has given students 14 calendar days to make their appointments and to get the process ready. We have at least 16 families whose children are not fully immunized or have not started the process. We sent out registered letters to them outlining what they have to do in order to be allowed to continue in school after September 19th, which is our 14th day. So students who have not complied with the law, and as we outlined in the registered letter that they each received, would not be allowed to attend our schools on September 20th. Correct. So I just wanted you to know, because this is not going over with several families. Several families have beliefs that they don't want their children to get immunized, and they're begging us to not uphold the law, and it's something I can't do. So I just wanted to.
So unclear. If a family having immunized their children but has started the process, they're able to stay in the school.
Yes, there are different requirements that they have to have had the first dose done by day 14. And appointments for the other doses, done.
And they were given letters 14 days
They were
ago.
given letters that says exactly what the doses had to contain. Yes, they were given all the information.
14 days ago? Is that what we sent her? Like, when, how did you know? Was everyone, whoever
It
was?
was after they started school and we knew they
Okay.
didn't have the
Got it.
immunizations required. I do have a meeting with some of the families tomorrow, again, where they'll plead with me to reconsider. The other items I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to just mention one thing before I call Dr. Zahn back up, is he's going to talk about something exciting that's happening at the high school, and what I wanted, and then we'll go into our tournament program. But I also want to remind the board that this week we started the SYA after-school program at the elementary school. This is a 3:30 to 6 p.m. program. That's not a school program. It's housed in our facility. It's an SYA, it's a Hampton Youth Association program, where parents pay a small fee for their students to have activities and get help with their schoolwork from 3:30 to 6 p.m. The manager of the program, or the person who's reading it, the head counselor, if you will, is one of our teachers from the intermediate school, Carrie Palumbo. So I'm hoping that SYA will have larger numbers. Right now, there are only 9 students. They said to keep the program going, they're going to need up to 20 students. So if anyone can spread the word, please, it would be great to have this opportunity for our families who work beyond 3:30 when school is out to have a fun, safe place for their children to have activities. And then other thing I wanted to talk to has to do with a request that Mr. Schuyler gave us last time about curriculum having to do with Pierce concept. I did check with our curriculum person, who's Virginia McGovern, and that subject has been written into our curriculum. It's covered in grades 2, 3, 7, and this year was added to 12. Ms. McGovern will be doing another presentation here on October 8th. She will gladly give us more details on what exactly is covered at each grade level. But I did want you to know, to answer your question, it is included within our curriculum.
Somebody kindly contact students and let them know.
Well, Ms. Simmons visited our office today, and I told her, we talked about it, she said she's gonna watch it on tape. We're also gonna invite her to be here on the 8th when she has any other questions. She can hear exactly what's covered on each of those grade levels.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're very welcome. And now I'm gonna ask Dr. Zahn to talk a little bit about the call to action forum about vaping at our high school.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Zahn. So certainly, one thing that we like our entire community to do is please save the date. I did announce this at our open house, but we are having a town hall style event, which is really a call to action against the current vaping epidemic that is plaguing not only our youth, but I would say all ages, particularly we're targeting our efforts at the youth who have been under siege from just a marketing blitz by some of these companies such as Juul that have really been targeting and going after our youth. So just a short little story about that before I give you some details of the event. That a gentleman by the name of Peter Emerson, who served over 40 years in politics, served in the White House numerous times, also is certainly does a lot of work on policy with Harvard University, very much back and forth in Washington all the time, was affected by the current vaping issue in his own family. And with that, reached out to Adam Fine at East Hampton High School, just to kind of get a better understanding of, hey, what are you seeing in our schools? With that, Adam reached out to me, and we've been working with Mr. Emerson in a joint project. And really that has energized him, and he has done a lot of work in providing us a great opportunity of having some direct contacts in Washington, D.C. He's actually on his way back there, was there, spent the week last week speaking with U.S. senators, assemblymen, again, has access to all of our elected officials, and has, as you've seen in the news, there's been a lot of national discussion about this topic that certainly he's been involved in and now involving us in. So partnering with our SAD Club, which is Students Against Destructive Decision-Making, Destructive Decisions, along with the assistance of Mr. Emerson, we are galvanizing our students in both East Hampton and East Hampton and Southampton. And we're hoping that some of our colleagues on the East End, also from some of our surrounding schools, help us with this charge. But it's really about a call to action for our students. And again, we have a very engaged group of students that really recognize the effects that vaping has had not only on them, their families, their classmates, and just hearing some of the stories from our students. It's and we're on the front lines of it every day, but hearing from the mouths of our students in terms of the impact that it's having on not only in our classrooms and our hallways, on our athletic fields, on our buses, but also on their social lives and everywhere else in their own households. It's just astonishing. One thing that we've recognized is that a lot of these companies, in terms of the companies that are producing e-cigarettes, are very methodical with their approach and how they're marketing this to our young people. And it's now our young people that are starting to stand up against this, just as it was our young people that really kind of broke the backs of cigarette companies and things like that in the past that made it socially unacceptable for people. They're starting to do the same with the issue that we're having with vaping. So I'm inviting our entire community on behalf of East Hampton, Southampton, our SAG clubs to really join in this effort that we believe we are going to be on the forefront of the national effort of young people that are standing up against these companies. So we're inviting everyone on Thursday, October 3rd at 7 o'clock at the high school in our gymnasium to be part of a town hall forum where you will hear from our students, you will hear from professionals in the field, you will hear from top researchers in the field, national experts in the field that will be in Southampton High School that will be speaking about this and galvanizing our community and our young people to take action. So again, we are really excited about this opportunity. It's an amazing experience that we have to get our students involved in this very important national topic. And again, it's young people that are going to help change and make the difference here. We need them to stand up against and to recognize the attack that they're under from some of these greedy companies such as Juul that are going after our youth. It's our youth that are going to start standing up now and taking that back and recognizing that, certainly they're going to stand up to some of the marketing that's taking place. So we're really excited to host this forum. We're begging our community to please come out on Thursday, October 3rd, 7 p.m. in the Southampton High School gym and really be part of this effort. And certainly, I think some of the work that our students are doing, if all things pan out, you may see them beyond Southampton, the Southampton community on the national stage taking this fight on. So we're excited about that opportunity and certainly hope that people come out on Thursday, October 10th at 7 p.m.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Are we gonna, is it gonna be streamed?
So not only are we streaming that, but yeah, we're actually doing that. It's a large production because I think what you're going to see is not only targeted for just our local community, but it's also targeted for our folks in Washington, D.C. So there is a pretty large production that's taking place to make sure that this is being done right and that the people who need to hear it are going to hear it.
Thank you.
So the final presentation we have tonight is going to be jointly done by Dr. Zahn and Mr. Monroe and myself. It has to do with alternative school, and I'd like to give you a little bit of background. We were sitting at a personnel committee meeting maybe 2 meetings ago, where there were several recommendations for an alternative program, and board members who were on that committee asked questions about the alternative program, and we realized not everyone is familiar with the alternative program, what its purpose is, what it accomplishes, who attends it, the cost. So I pulled the items from the agenda and asked Dr. Zahn if he would give us kind of an overview of what the program is, of how many students have been enrolled in the past, of who you think is planning on attend this year. And that's part one of the presentation. And then part two is Mr. Monroe and I have, Mr. Monroe has evaluated the cost and reviewed the cost for the past several years. We've also looked at neighboring districts who would accept our students should we want to send students out for the program. So I'm going to let Dr. Zahn do the program review first, and then we'll go over the cost both of our programs and neighborhood programs.
Sure, thank you, Dr. Dino. So, what I'm going to do at this point is really just as Dr. Dino was going to give you an overview of our alternative school program to really help everyone understand what the program is, who we serve, what does it look like, and how are we doing, what's our performance showing. So let's dive right into the description. So our old school is designed mostly for 11th and 12th grade students. Generally, we want to see our students in 9th and 10th grade, go through a series of courses and be present in Southampton High School. But there are case-by-case, individual basis where we have accepted 10th graders into the program. Now, some of the students access our alternative school for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's just because they need a non-traditional approach to their education that some students cannot get in our traditional day program. Other times there are different, different challenges that some of our students face in terms of some students have to support themselves and make sure that they have a place to stay, and that means they have to work during the day, which means that they cannot attend day program, but still we want to keep them engaged and ensure that they graduate high school. So there's a number of reasons that we have students accessing our alternative school program in 11th and 12th grade. Also, what we've done, this is more of a recent phenomenon, is that when students are unfortunately faced with a suspension from the day program, we found that keeping them off campus is certainly, I think, detrimental in terms of it's much harder for students to recover when they're off campus, they're not connected to the school. And I know some schools do this through web-based programs or farm it out through different other agencies. What we've done is we took the approach to keep the kids with us engaged, and we've had some students that have not been permitted to stay in our day program. We place them in our alternative program so we can keep them close and again keep them engaged and make sure that we're keeping an eye on how they're doing and ensure that they can transition back, and we've seen some good results from that as well. In terms of there are varying goals of the program depending on when students access and why they access. For some cases, it's we know that students are going to be there for the long run in the alternative school program, and we want to make sure that they're graduating. In other cases, they may need to access our alternative school for some reason specific to that student with the goal of transitioning back to our day program. So it really, really varies in terms of the students that we meet with, that we enroll into our alternative program, and the plan that we have in terms of graduation plan or transition plan back. Students can attend through their 21st birthday, and we have had in many cases students do that where they've accessed the program and taken it right to the edge right before they turn 21. We've been able to graduate students. So again, even though that's the same for the day program, we generally find students that are at the ages of 20 and 21, they're generally enrolled and choose to enroll in our alternative school program. Also, before we get into the formatting of it, it's one thing to point out that transportation is not currently provided to our alternative school students. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Our program runs on a daily basis from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. Again, transportation not provided. So students are responsible for finding transportation to and from our school. And I know that in some cases that does prevent some of our kids attending. But just in general, what I'm providing you here is a sample schedule of our alternative school program. I have courses and subjects listed as specific. Please know this is just an example. This could vary from year to year based on where we have to place certain courses. But typically, this is what a schedule would look like, is that we would run on one day 2 sessions, a 3 o'clock to 4:30 session, and then a 4:30 to 6 session. In the past, we have done that because what we found in the past is that we ran each discipline on one day for 3 hours straight. And what we learned from that is if you have a student that misses 1 week, it's not one day, it's like missing an entire week of instruction. So that was very hard to recover from. So what we did is we actually spread out the disciplines over the course of the week. So if by chance a student does miss a math class on Monday, they can hit that class on Wednesday again. And again, if you're enrolled in that class, you're expected to be there from 3 to 4:30 on, for example, on a Monday, and again on a Wednesday from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And we found that this model absolutely is much better for our students and our staff. But generally, we run each student that is enrolled, and again, students can be enrolled for the full breadth of all different types of courses over many different disciplines. Or in some cases, you have students that may not have hit their graduation target. Maybe they're missing a course or a Regents exam, and they're only attending for one discipline. So it varies greatly with our students in terms of their needs. But traditionally, we offer every day. Our program is running. We have courses running throughout the week, with traditionally PE and health running on Fridays. The staffing that we have had in our program is one coordinator that essentially serves as your alternative school principal. We call it a coordinator, but generally they're doing principal work for that program. They're running that program. I'm overseeing that coordinator, but the coordinator is the boots on the ground from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock with that program, staying with that program. We also have a counselor in there, and again, you need a counselor just because of many of these kids. You have to take a look at what is needed for graduation in terms of credits and courses and exams. So you need a counselor to really be able to navigate that, just even in terms of elective credits that kids need. So you need a counselor present. We have one secretary that only comes for 2 hours a week just to take care of some of our clerical needs that we have throughout. And then we have one teacher per discipline. One teacher for math, English, social studies, science, and we have a phys ed and health teacher that really they serve as 0.5 each, which equates to one teacher. One of the challenges of our alternative school program is that we have one teacher per discipline, and you may have several students in a class that require different courses or different needs. So you have one teacher that really has to differentiate and be able to meet the needs of several students in the class that may require several different classes. So for that, we do have teacher assistants that do assist with that. So for an example, if there's a math class and you may have a student that still has to get through Algebra 1 or pass that Regents, yet you have also students that need just math credits and they're enrolled in whether it's intermediate algebra or applied. You have a teacher that's delivering direct instruction to one student, a TA that's working with others on other work that has to be completed for that course. So that structure has worked for us with the teacher TA type of model. The other piece that we included just recently, we actually increased staff in this area, was in the area of E&L teachers to support Part 154. We are mandated to provide Part 154 services. That does include students that do attend our alternative school program. We are finding over time the number of students that do that are considered RLs, English language learners, are accessing this program for a variety of different reasons. Like I said, whether it's some students just need to work during the day, we have to be able to meet their needs and provide those services. So we do have 2 E&L teachers that have been pushing into classrooms as well, providing Part 154 services. So let's take a look at the summary over the past couple of years. So traditionally, we have averaged over the course of the year about 11 students. Now, it's important to know that we're not looking at 11 students over the course of the entire year. There's an ebb and flow of all schools. Students are accessing at different points, they're exiting at different points. And students, again, can exit for a number of reasons. They can transition back to the day program, they can fulfill their requirements, and the same thing goes for when they enter. Students may enter at various times based on specific situations, whether it is a student just finding they're struggling through the day program, and they may access at a certain point of the year. So over the course of the year, we generally find that, and through my enrollment numbers, that we're averaging, we saw 11 in the 2016-17 year, 11 the following year, and last year we had 13 students. Then what I did is mapped out in terms of what does that look like? Where are students going? in all alternatives program. How many are graduating, how many are coming back, how many are returning, how many are we losing? And you see that over the course of this. So generally, we're graduating approximately 4 students a year. If you look at my numbers for 18-19, I do want to point out, and I corrected this, I mistakenly put 4 graduates last year. We had 3 graduates last year. So please know that that number for 18-19, that's 3 graduates from our alternative school program last year. We generally sometimes lose students. They do not return the following year. We've seen in some cases where we may lose students for some time. A couple months later, or the following year, with the outreach from our counselors and everyone else, and the support of community members, liaisons, we're able to pull students back in. That does happen a lot. And again, we have students that transition back into our day program, which we have several students that did that this year, that were in our alternative program last year, re-accessed our day program this year, transitioned back, and we're monitoring those students as well. And then you have students that also return into the alternative program, and I've noted that. So you can see that we have a variety of, it's very hard to pinpoint. It's not like your day program where you can say it's very clean, you know, students accessing at certain points, going through certain trajectories. Our alternative school program can be a bit fluid, but it's important to note that we are seeing, you know, we're getting grads through. Kids that, in many cases, would be what you consider dropping out of high school. We're able to pull them in, we're able to keep them here and graduate. We know in a small high school, when we're graduating 4 students, that's big, because that can impact our graduation rate significantly if we didn't offer this program to our students. That can drop our percentage by several points.
Mr. Robinson, can I ask one question?
Sure.
What are the ages of these students?
So generally, again, we traditionally have students accessing in 11th grade. So we've seen students anywhere as young as 16 years old all the way up to 21 years old. And it varies. Now, I would say most of the time, you're looking at students that are anywhere from 17, 18, 19, 20, 21.
On the upper register. On the upper register.
On the other. So a couple of things. So that really gave you an overview of what the program looks like on a daily basis, how it's run, and also what our enrollment summaries look like. So I know that we are discussing a couple different things, and I put out some of the proposals that have been put out by speaking with Dr. Dano, the Board of Education, some things that we need to consider that you know, certainly we have to keep in mind when we're having this discussion tonight. I know that we are proposing possible outsourcing of this program. Certainly, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm concerned about that program, and I say that because I know the kids we serve. In fact, I think he kind of bailed out on us. We had one student that has been calling frequently, trying to, you know, access Alt School, asking us when we're going to be starting. He was going to speak tonight, but I guess we lost him throughout the evening. The other piece is I know that proximity is very important for the students. In terms of many students coming straight from work, many students are coming here, transportation is an issue. If we are to outsource and we don't have transportation, I think that's going to be a major problem. In fact, I think many of the students that we have accessing our program, you know, do because also they stay connected to Southampton High School. And I believe if we outsource that, I think we have the potential to lose many of the students that we would be serving in our traditional program. One of the things that also was on our radar this year that we were interested in piloting that I think is very important is we've been struggling in the area of grade recovery for our students in our day program. Grade recovery meaning that if students are failing one quarter or another quarter, we've had opportunity for them to recover that quarterly grade through various online programs. That approach we haven't found great success with. Generally, students that are struggling in your day program, they're not going to benefit from an online program. They need that face-to-face, that interaction, that TLC that our teachers can provide for them. So we had an idea of having students, rather than relying on online types of programs, possibly piloting having some of our students that need to recover a quarterly grade, access our alternative school for a certain period of time to recover that in our old school as well. And again, that can also be a tremendous benefit to our students in our day program. In terms of considerations, one of the other pieces that we have to speak about is in some cases, students with that fall under special education that have IEPs that are scheduled to receive mandated services. We schedule many of those students to come in at the end of our traditional day program to meet with our providers, whether it's our counselors, psychologists, speech pathologists, or any of the other providers. We'll schedule them at the end of our day program. They can get that mandated service, ninth period at the end of the day, and then go right into their old school program. If we outsource that, that's something that we're going to have to figure out.
How does that work now that the extra help period is first period in the morning? Ninth period is
It's
the regular class.
It's just on how our providers schedule that. We haven't found any difference with that.
So providers, you mean occupational therapists?
Correct.
Okay.
Speech pathologists.
People that come in.
People that are there, right? So our students that need that service would be scheduled, say, from 2:15 to 2:45, for example. Right now, our providers are still there to 2:45. It does not matter whether that's we're scheduling all throughout the day, so flipping that to the morning hasn't changed our ability to provide that service. The other piece is that, and I think the one thing I can't stress enough is that students in our old school program need that sense of connectedness to their community. We provide that. And in many cases, you see a lot of our students that are graduates of our alternative school program. They're participating in our graduations, they're at our dances, they're at our events, they're part of our community. And I think that's really important to know that, and part of the reasons why we're able to get some of our students to come back to us and also to graduate is because they have that sense of connectedness to our community. And I think that's something that we can provide in our old school program that outsourcing cannot do. With that, certainly I'm here to take your questions, but I think we'll add
So
some
let's
more
go to the
this.
cost and then we'll stay there for questions. Mine will only take a couple of minutes. Tom, would you go to the cost PowerPoint?
Cost.
Cost PowerPoint, it's exactly the same area.
The next one right up, yeah, thank you.
So, the question last time was what is the budget, and there's only 3 slides to this, and it's our cost, and then what outsourcing, as Brian called it, to other programs might cost us. As you see, the cost for the program was budgeted this year is $118,408, and that includes one cost for the staffing that Brian talked about earlier. You'll see there's a change in the rate of the program from between 2017-18, 2018-19. That was when the E&L teachers were added, as Brian talked about, to provide our students who require Part 154 services. So the total cost of the program in years past, there was a $200,000 and some program before Brian was even part of this. The older model, before we went to this whole model that we're using now. Brian's reduced the cost significantly to almost 50% of what it was in earlier years. If we were to, if you go to the next slide, Tom, if we were to use, we contact three areas that has a similar program, or has a similar program in design, not as personalized as what Dr. Zahn talked about. One is Eastern Suffolk BOCES, that's housed at the Tech Center in Riverhead, and one is Hampton Bays, and one is Bridgehampton. So the cost at BOCES, they run, as I said, a similar program where students could take up to 4 courses. Their cost per student is $16,478
Sorry.
per student. I'm sorry?
Did they make it bigger?
I don't know. It should be on the computer as well. So it's $16,478 per student to attend, if the student was to attend the whole year. Dr. Zahn talked a little bit about transportation. If we were sending students to Riverhead, we would need to provide transportation. So the cost of a bus to and fro is not included in that per student cost. That also doesn't include if their student had any special education requirements or Part 154 requirements. Those would be add-on costs if BOCES can provide them. It depends on who they have staffing for. The next, there's no slide for this yet, Tom, but the next one was Hampton Bays that we talked about, who was.
Can I just comment on the BOCES piece? Because we do have some experience with the BOCES program. Several years back, through a joint effort, we did provide and open up a BOCES ENL Twilight-based program that we enrolled several of our students in. That program is no longer in existence. It was just very hard. Again, we lost many students. They didn't feel that sense of connectedness at the BOCES program. Transportation was not provided, which was a major piece for that. So,
Okay, thank you. We talked about Hampton Bays, which ran a model similar to the model Brian described. Not quite exactly the same, but similar to our model. Hampton Bays is not interested in accepting our students. They're struggling with their program. There are also some other requirements that the state has put down that wouldn't apply to our program based on how we're structured. Hampton Bays needs to review their program, see if they need to redesign it, but at this time, they're not interested in accepting any students from other districts. So that option is out. That left us with, now the next slide, Tom. Bridgehampton, who runs a similar program to what we do, much smaller than what we do, but similar program. And they talked about, they've never had a tuition-based student for the program. So they're estimating the cost would be $17,500 per student, plus transportation, of course. And then if that student needed Part 154 or special ed services, there would be additional costs as well.
and you pay those costs, whether at BOCES and other places, even if the student needs one course. You know, if they need one course or 5 courses.
Yeah, if they need to find a staff member, that's the cost of the
That's
staff
it.
member. So that goes back to Tom, if you would go back to the first page. So the cost this year for an in-house program would be $118,408. That's if everyone, that's the maximum it would be based on everyone attending each time, all the staff members up to their maximum. And as Brian said, we don't provide transportation to our own program. We require the kids to be able to get to and from.
And if you wanted to break down the per student cost based on that 118,000, it would be between $10,000 to $12,000 depending on your enrollment. I'm estimating between 10 and 12 students, which is way cheaper than sending them out.
Can you just clarify something for me, Dr. Dino? The 118,408, you said that that's if the staff is there using all their time, so it could be less than that?
It could be less than that, right? If
Because,
there's a snow day, this includes every day that we have.
yeah, and not only that, in some cases, one of the reasons we project, for example, a health teacher. This year, we may not, generally, we always require, but we may not need a health teacher. We may not need in certain times of the year where our English teacher has to report based on the needs of the students. So it's paid by an hourly rate by teachers when they're attending. So that's why in some cases, we may not, at certain points in the year, we may not be having teachers report if it's not needed.
They only get paid if they work and submit a timesheet that is on your side.
But it's 111,852 exactly what we paid last year or what we budgeted for?
These are the.
That's the actual cost,
111.
yes.
And last year you had 11 students, is that what I understand?
Last year, we had, so let me go back to my presentation. It was 11 students,
But
that's
only
correct.
4 graduated,
3
correct?
graduated,
3?
Yep, 3 graduated, 2 so far, did not return. 3 transitioned back to the day program, and 2 are looking right now, 2 are looking to return.
So for $111,000, 3 graduated.
But again, all 11 of them weren't eligible to graduate. Remember, you had.
Oh, because you had some 11
10th
graders.
graders in there, you had 11th graders in there.
Okay.
So that was in terms of the potential graduates,
Okay.
everyone that was on par, we were there.
Can you give me the demographics of the program?
So I don't have the actual specific demographics on me right now. You know, I know the students that we have, I have my enrollment. But generally, it's a mixed bag between males, females. It's definitely a more male-heavy program. I can tell you that, in terms of the ethnic breakdown, I can do that for you. I would just,
Yeah, no,
I can provide that to you. I can tell you that the two students that have been eagerly trying to get back are two of our male Shinnecock students.
Say it again?
male Shinnecock students.
Now, Susan said that there are potentially 5 students that she can name right now
Correct.
who would possibly be ready to go.
Absolutely.
To go tomorrow.
5.
And have they tried to come back to school this year, or they're,
We have,
Able
of
to?
course, invited them back to our day program, but in all cases, our students do not want to return to the day.
And one of the students contacted Susan was a non-completer who signed himself out of school last year, was it?
Correct.
And now wants to come back, but doesn't think he'll be successful in the day program.
Correct.
I just have a few questions. I just want some clarification. The coordinator would work, I mean, is the coordinator paid hourly, as you said? it
No.
was?
The coordinator is the only one that's not paid hourly. The coordinator is a stipend position.
Okay, so they have to be in district at the school for the 15 hours a week
Correct.
in the building.
Correct.
But the work goes beyond the 15 hours, because a
Correct.
lot of the phone calls and some of the coordination happens beyond school.
Okay.
The 15 hours is just that, when you're getting to that part, it's a lot of course, supervision, troubleshooting, and all that, but the work, there's a lot of work that has to be done before classes start, after classes start, just as we do. There's a lot of startup material, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it, so the coordinator's doing that.
I was a little confused when you started to talk about, you have students come and go, you know, and when you say 13 or the 11 that were in the program, I call it, is that full-time equivalent students?
It depends. Again, for example, let me give you an example of that. Of our grads last year, we had, of the 3 grads, we had 1 grad that was 2 credits short. So they weren't coming every single day. They were coming for the 2 courses and 2 credits that they needed throughout the week over the course of the year, and they finished. I had another student that was a 10th grade student that was there every single day for every single class. It's very specific and personalized to the student and their needs.
I guess my basic question comes down, how many individual students does this program touch? That's
Last
what I
year,
want, you know, are we handling 26 over the course of the year, or are we handling?
no, we're handling at one point or another. To give you an example of the 11 students, I had students in some cases that were enrolled for the full gamut of the, close to 180 days. I had some students that were enrolled 100 days. I had students that were enrolled, and one student was enrolled and fulfilled what we used to do in 47 days. And then, again, it goes as low as, 47 seemed to be one of the lowest. But again, 47 all the way up to,
Right, but is that 11 students in that, or is that more than the 11 students?
what I'm telling you is the 11 students.
Okay, so somewhere in there for the full gamut.
Correct.
For 47 days.
Correct.
Okay, that's what. So the program handled 11 students in 16, 17, 17, 18,
Correct.
and 13 in this current cast year.
Correct.
I might have the years a little confused.
It was 11, 11, and 13.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then.
Now,
How many, I mean, we're looking now, there's 2 coming back, and I just heard there may be 5 additional.
we're always reaching out to kids that are, and students that are under 21 and still have the potential to graduate. We're always reaching out to them. We want them back.
5 includes the 2.
5 including 2. Now, the question is, I mean, do we ever use this, for students who end up working during the day? I have no other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We had, I can tell you last year, 1, 2, I had 3 students last year that could not attend day program because they had to work during the day. And that was one of the reasons why they were attending the homeschool program.
How about students who have problems with attending during the regular day just because they might not get out of bed or? I hate to begin with this saying this.
I don't ever recall a case of I can't get out of bed, I can't get into school, and I want to be in the old school. It has to be a little, we have an intake process So there are times where it's like, no, sorry kid, let's go. We'll smack in the tush and get your butt to school kind of thing. Those are kids that would not fall under our
Into this
program. Right. You know, you're talking about kids that have much more significant needs or reasons for that. And in many cases, many of the students we're dealing with probation, we're dealing with the courts, we're dealing with a lot of various issues, you know, that also are.
These students truly want to be in this program.
Most do, some have to as part of their probation or forbearance and things like that. Yes. So, but generally, if they're attending, it's because they want to finish.
Again, I'm gonna drill down on the age. There's a couple of students that are interested in coming back now, are how old?
So the students that have been knocking on our door, the two students that have been knocking on our door are super seniors. So their cohort has graduated, and they are currently, off the top of my head, 19 and 20, turning 20.
Again, my experience with something like this is that if they were to enroll in the community college, and if they were to garner 12 credits, I think it was 12 credits, and then
Building
almost the
benefit
equivalent.
program and other college-based programs. We're very familiar with them. In some cases, students we will help students access that if they are able to do that.
So I have a problem with the concept of this type of program, when it was designed, was for the kid who there were issues, 16, 17, 18, trying to work their way towards graduation. I have difficulty when it becomes, like I'm gonna get a deli number, and I'm gonna get on the deli line, that this is an option for me to choose in order to get a diploma. And I'm sensing that we're providing them the deli number. In other words, there is an option, you come to school for a couple periods a day if you have to go to work. Get here at 7:30, I mean, again, I'm just throwing out ideas. But to provide a program for students that are 19 or 20, I have difficulty with that. When you had an opportunity, or you have other opportunities that you could take without costing the taxpayers. In other words, you go to community college, you have to get there, you pay whatever fee it is, and if you really want to do this, you'll go and you'll get those credits. I mean, I'm sure that kid didn't get to be 20 or 19 without a lot of interventions within the school system to get us there. And so now we're looking at this like an option. I have trouble with that.
Who's the site students, right? Unless they're the site students.
You do have site students in there, you do, and you know, in all the cases that I've spoken about, I understand your point, but I don't know if necessarily that's really kind of the lens that the students are looking at, that I have the option of going to, say, Suffolk and like I said, the ability to benefit and all those other programs. In many cases, students are coming back because they recognize that they've missed an opportunity and they really want to finish their high school studies at Southampton.
But Dr. Son, I just got to push back and say, so you're saying when some student who's 19 or 20 is now saying that the taxpayers of the Southampton district will be the safety net to catch them so they don't fall. I mean, I'm pushing back. I mean, I'm not saying I'm totally opposed to this, but there are two sides to this, and I'm giving you the other side.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Other than site, that, you know, when you said that they would be supported, or they had a lot of, you know, if a child came at 17 or 16 and didn't have the formal education that we expect, let's say, or we've provided for other students, that would be my only. But I hear what you're saying. At 19 and 20 and 21, when there are other opportunities, I totally.
I'm not worried about a cohort number based on somebody who's 3 years out, and we want to chalk them up and say, you know.
But again, look at the number of kids that we're returning to the day program too. You know, so let's not just focus on the 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Again, we're serving, in some cases, we've had over the past 2 years, you know, 10th graders accessing the program and a transition back to the day school. My fear is that
That costs $100,000 up to the taxpayers. That's all I'm saying. Just as long as you understand
I just wanted, and I'm gonna, Mr. McKenna's line. In 17-18, we had 4 students who returned the following year, which would be into the class that we're talking about. Of those, how many graduated in that year?
Of those specific returners,
How many have graduated this year? What is,
so the students that
What's the results?
of the 3 students that, that graduated last year, you had, in that case, you had students that were, either 1 to 2 years off of, the same graduation trajectory of their cohorts. So 1 to 2 years off of, from where their cohort graduated.
So you said 2?
1 or 2 years.
So the 4 that returned, 1 was graduated in 17-18.
Say that one more time.
No.
Of the 4 who returned to the open school following the year, 1 graduated in that year, 17-18.
No,
No.
not
What I'm trying to
necessarily.
find, my question
Not
is,
necessarily.
of those students who come back that are 19, and 18,
Yeah.
I can see. 19, 20, 21, I start to have a little, especially if you've been out of school for a year. Where have you been for the year? And now all of a sudden, as Mr. McKenna said, we've become a safety net, where there's other opportunities for, but of those who come back who have missed a year that are, let's say 19, 20, how many graduate? What's the result? That's of those particular.
I can even strip that out for you and look at, but I don't want to give you that number until I look at my students. I have my rosters, look at my students. I don't want to do that, try and calculate that right here for you.
And is it, it's relevant because it's really not that big a number. I want to know, is this really, is a program worthwhile for us to run? If 3 of those graduates come, are from
Every year, we are
19 to
keeping
20.
up to 11 kids engaged and in school. To me, the price of the program compared to our overall budget, I'm more interested in keeping our kids in our community engaged and graduated and in school. And that's what we're doing with the program. Whether philosophically we believe of if that cohort graduated, and it's our responsibility to again help them after their cohort graduated, I'll still argue against that point. I will say we have that obligation.
anybody who graduated from high school, the social economic impact is enormous. It's just that at some point, at 19 and 20, I start to have a little reservation about it,
I don't.
especially if they're not graduating.
But I will tell you this, and I understand that, and this was even before Brian was here. There are students who didn't have any gaps in their education, but there are students who could not and would not have completed through the day program and graduated high school. But going to the alternative program is what saved them, based on behavior, based on child at home, based on need to work or whatever. It's what helped them get a diploma. It might have taken them 5 years, but there wasn't a gap, like they didn't leave and come back. It was a way to make up
If the
credits.
kids didn't have that program and transitioned back to our day program, potentially those are non-grads.
That's what I mean. And 5
It's not
students not graduating in
That
our
hurts.
district is a huge hit.
In this community, that hurts.
So if I could just ask about staffing, the coordinator is there every day, you said?
Coordinator, their responsibility is to, again, directly supervise that program.
Okay, and then who would typically be a coordinator and how would it impact their daily schedule? You start at 3 o'clock, if it's,
So.
like someone's hours, how does it
So
impact that?
in my experience, I've worked with 2 coordinators in my 8 years. One was an elementary school teacher, that we were able to back then had a little more flexibility with her start time, and she was able to come at the start time. But again, we were under the old model where courses were set up a little differently. And for the past couple of years, Angela Hughes Johnson served in that capacity. So again, she fulfilled her day program 2:45, and she was there in the building for our program from the 3 to 6 p.m. piece. And that was, again, boots on the ground, daily supervision. She was popping into classrooms, walking around, supporting teachers. And again, a lot of this program, in some cases, depending on where we're going out, we're pulling kids into school. If they're not attending, we're driving out to the community. That's what our counselor was doing. That's what she was doing. So you had that aspect too. Look, we're working hard to, in some cases, they're an alternative school for a reason. And they need that extra kind of push in TLC to keep them engaged in school. So our coordinator and our counselors were doing that as well.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I think that we have a lot to think about with this.
Nick, I just wanted to ask you, if you do an alternative school, are you required to, like, can you just say it's only for ages 10 to 14 or 14 to 17? Or are you required, like, is it up to us as a school district to determine
Criteria?
everything, yeah, from age to,
Here's the thing, in terms of age though, students have the right to access our schools. They can go back to our day program until they're 21 years old.
right,
They can.
I can tell you can't have an alternative school that runs these hours for younger students. It has to be someone who's a high school age student.
and do you think that if we had night school, you know, like typical night school, the way I remember it, would you have more kids involved, more? Do you think that because it's at 3 o'clock, that if someone was to be working, that it sort of?
Well, I think I can tell you the preferred model from the state are what they call twilight schools, PM schools,
Right.
is this model.
Right.
3
The students,
to 6.
yeah, around that time, somewhere 3 to 7, somewhere 3:30 to 6:30.
Yeah, generally that, you don't see very many of those
Night
true
schools.
night schools anymore. You just don't.
And especially if if your target population has young ones at home or there's the reason they couldn't come to a day program has to do with some type of responsibilities at home.
And thank you for pointing out, we have had, in some cases, new moms actually attending, couldn't attend because of daycare issues, but it's easier for, not easier, but the only daycare they can get was for that 2 hours, so we were able to slow them return to school, after they had a child. We have had 2 cases of that in the past as well.
Thank you, Dr. Zahn, Mr. Mingo, and Dr. Dino.
So my question, I guess, would be for the board is, if we don't start something or send kids out, if we want to send them out, October 1st is kind of the deadline for us to have something, a plan in place, which is prior to the next board meeting. So I'm not sure how you want to handle it.
But we had actually planned on, in our budget, we had planned on running it.
Yes.
I really don't have a problem in running the program, I wanted to vest it. I wanted the information so that I can exchange, with people that ask me about it.
Is there a way to get the cost down? I'm gonna just put out there, is there a way to get the cost down? Because when you look at per pupil, if there are 5 students, right, just for argument's sake, if there are 5
But-
students and we're spending,
But the price is gonna drop because it's done on an hourly basis with all the.
Right.
Except
So even if there were 2 students or 8 students, you still need a teacher in each of the content areas for those certain amount of hours.
right,
You can have, for example, you can have 5 students enrolled that only need a math credit. Generally, that'll keep the cost low because I'm only having a math teacher show up. You may have 2 students that require multiple things, which require more teachers to show up. So it's very hard to answer, in terms of, you can't say if we have 2 students, it's going to be cheaper.
But again, they get paid on a per hour basis, or do we give them a salary for?
The coordinator is a stipend, all the others are hourly based.
Hourly.
it's a teacher's hourly rate, correct?
Yes.
Because this is coming in at us at a late time, this is a lot of information. I mean, I'm not going to be a gatekeeper, I think right now, to stop something that we've had for several years. I think the stipulation, I'm looking at as long as there's nobody that's hired as a staff member that would be conflicting with their schedules. That's always been a problem with staffing, I assume.
Yeah, and that's particularly hard with when teachers also, we have teachers that coach and all that piece. That's the hard piece, and we've had teachers that, in the past were interested, they coach a seasonal sport, they can't do it.
Because it's full year, right? It starts
Full year.
October 1st? and it-
Generally, our classes run, typically in a typical year, we're starting around now.
So, but there can't be anybody that doesn't finish their day before 3 o'clock taking these positions. That's, it just can't, you're getting paid twice then. So that's gonna be, even the secretaries, what time do they get done? Do they come and they work at 6 or they come at 4?
No. Generally, our secretary, the secretary that has done that in the past has a 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. So then after 3 p.m. comes, she would typically stay, either stay for an hour twice a week, or depending on what the need is. Sometimes she may only need to stay for a half hour. She would do that.
So is this something that we need to repost the positions?
We had recommendations from the previous postings.
Correct.
They're just pulled from the agenda.
Okay.
So I think we can vet them again through personnel committee if you'd like.
And just also be aware that we had to post positions 2 times in many cases because we could not get candidates. So we have people that are committed to,
And I understand that, but you have to understand from our side as well, with the, the money that we're spending. I'm not comfortable with paying somebody that is being paid to be at the school until 5 o'clock.
So it's generally, the concern is over administrators that were putting in for positions, and that was over at a second posting. Is that am
Well,
I hearing that correctly?
it was a concern for across the board with the personnel committee about how many kids were in the program when it came up. And, was it monetarily worth it? And of course, every child's education is worth it. We want everybody to graduate and have a successful life, but we also have to look at the cost for it.
Sure.
Because unfortunately, that's what we're here for. So, personnel committee, do you want to, I think we meet next week.
I think
it's,
the board needs to make the commitment to the program, so we can go on with it.
right,
The personnel part of it, I think, can follow up,
yes, that's.
so. And I'd be for, I have no problem putting in a form of motion to move forward with the program.
I agree, was my next statement.
I just asked that regardless, because I think with the personnel, obviously we need a coordinator in place.
Right.
And that's always generally, in the past, our coordinator has been in place long before the other employees, because they're doing a lot of the pre-work before,
Right.
as some are doing the outreach, doing the, starting scheduling together, all that kind of work. Right now, we haven't had that started yet, so.
Okay, well, as Mr. King said, that I think we need to make a commitment to the program, and really reevaluate it for next year, since we have it in the budget for this year. And the personnel committee will look again at, the recommendations and we'll move forward from
As
there.
long as we can maybe look at some creative alternatives, this is what I'd like, and maybe, think about who we're really serving and what ultimately they're getting out of it, if they're, I don't know, I just think that
I think
I'd like to see some options.
that in the, when we get into budget season, and then towards the end of the school year, I think what I'm hearing is the board wants to reeval again.
Yeah.
See how it goes, but we can't do evaluation
Sure.
before we start, it needs to be done in our budgeting season.
Yeah, and one of the things that we can do, which I even recommended with a variety of programs, summer school and everything, I think the Senate is a great forum to really kind of drill down on a lot of the topics too. Throughout the year, more information is needed, whether it's in this forum or in the Senate, we can share information and have that level of discussion too. So it doesn't have to, we don't have to wait.
Right.
Right. Okay, so, are we in agreement to,
I'll put it in the form that we, go ahead with that, sir. I'll put it in the motion to continue the alternate.
can I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, thank you, Dr. Don, or
Thank you.
Dr. Zahn.
No, and I appreciate that at least, because we did budget for this year, to at least give us the year to go, and then we'll see how that goes, and obviously during budget season throughout the year,
Yeah.
we'll evaluate that. Thank you.
Okay, do you have anything else? Dr. Don? Okay, so, Mr. Mingo?
Couple of items on the consent agenda. You'll see a lease agreement with Eastern Suffolk BOCES. We've been working on that lease agreement for a couple of months. We've been going back and forth with our attorneys. They changed some of the language. And we finally now at the point where we agreed and it's ready for approval. So basically the lease is for them to pay for the space for, at the trades program in the high school. We also have item 12.01, is the half of the cost of the chef for vegan and food service. Basically, I think a few meetings ago, I spoke about how we were gonna come up with that funding to support the program. Again, these are savings that we had from the workman's comp budget. When I went to the last meeting, I found out that actually I budgeted more than I actually needed because we had some savings from the previous year, and we really looked at the previous 2 years in order to determine what the final cost will be to the district. You also see some items about number of transfers, that relates to 2018, 2019. Again, we have the external auditors coming in next week, and we just need to do those transfers to clean out all the negative balances from the previous year. So you have certain budget lines that went into deficits, and you have certain budget lines that have money remaining. We just need to equalize everything so that it looks very clean for the auditors. That's basically it.
I just want to make a comment about when it says 10,000, I just want to be clear, all budget lines are going to be cleaned up, not just those over 10. The board has to approve those over 10.
Yes, the ones that are over 10,000 need board approval, but you already did a number of those transfers because they were under $10,000.
But the total of those over 10,000 is the number there? Or is that the total?
That's the total for over 10,000. The total for the under 10,000 was around $92,000.
Thanks.
And item 12.4, you'll see 2 quarterly reports from the central treasurer. She's catching up to the first and second quarter of calendar year 2019. These are the student activity funds, the different clubs. We had a new central treasurer take over about 6 months ago, so she's just catching up to those items.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. McDowell? Okay, it's getting late, so I'm gonna speed along here. With regards to the committees, we have the first reading of a couple policies. I hope that everybody takes a look at them, and then if you have any questions, you can bring them to the policy committee and we'll review them.
I just want to make one comment, and I will be quick. These, we would like to expedite these, so there will be one more reading, a chance, so we ask the board, please read them, any comments, get into the policy, so we can incorporate them at our next meeting and then present them for approval. These are policies that we're behind on, we want to get them up to date. To meet the state criteria.
The personnel committee, I skipped over that. We basically just went over one of the big concerns that we had with the alternate school. I see that we don't have any other reports here. Does any committee member have anything to say on committee? The dates for the academic senate? Yeah, so if anybody wants to just plug in the date that they have, that they're available, and send it to Amy, and then she can forward it to the rest of us.
And we'll be meeting tomorrow, right?
And
We're meeting tomorrow, at
I know it's one of these.
3 o'clock, yeah, something like that, we're meeting just to sort of set some goals.
I will also, I'm sorry, back up to the personnel committee. Our electrician has resigned. He's been here for less than a year. He is resigning. And Mr. De Silva, who left, I appreciate that he was here for so long, has said that we do not need to post for that position right now, that everything is in pretty good shape and we can handle what we have going on. So we're sad to see the electrician go, but we'll be fine for now. And then when he's ready, he'll repost for that position.
If we were to have, any need for an electrician, we have contracted vendors that we can.
Right. Okay, so if nobody has anything else to say about committees, I'll move on to the consent agenda items. Are there any consent agenda items from 11.01 through 11.09 that any member wishes to discuss or has questions as presented in the agenda?
1103, please.
11.03.
I'm gonna have a question on 11,
Okay,
1109.
and 11.09? Okay. Okay, you want to ask your question, please?
Sure, 11, I was just wondering why that agreement for the special education summer program agreement between us and the Tuckahoe Common School for this past summer is just appearing before the board.
So I actually got the same question from Anastasia earlier today. There was some confusion. The contract was actually already signed, but for some reason it was misplaced, and we had to reissue the contract.
Nothing, I don't need any more explanation. And as the others, I would just say, if the board, I'd just like to see if it, I don't know if that was asked verbally, or if it was done by writing that, if we include all the board to eliminate the question when I looked at it this afternoon. So, and I wouldn't have wasted the time.
Yeah.
1109, it is approved the newspaper policy, the policy compliance review. I think that's actually a great,
Yes.
great cost. I just want the board to
And
read.
money well spent.
And it's to review policy, our whole book, and get us up to date. But I think it's something that we need to do annually. And the other question I have that goes along with it, does that include a year of their updates? That we get to say that this needs to be changed after we've done with this?
That's a separate service that we've already budgeted for, and that's already included with what we have.
It's already in place.
This is a separate service that's gonna help us get back up.
Thank you.
And you do it every year, I mean, do they recommend doing it every year?
Well, we're kind of hopeful that if we do this and we don't need
You won't need it every year, right?
No, and it's the diligence of the committee to keep up with it,
Right.
of all those changes.
So you
that
maybe,
you got.
you might need it maybe every 3 or 4 years, or something like that, just.
You need a new baseline.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, are there any consent agenda items from 11.01 through 11.09 that any member wishes to be held out for separate action as presented in the agenda? If without objection, items 11.01 through 11.09 are hereby approved as presented in the agenda. Are there any financial items from 12.01 through 12.04 that any member wishes to discuss or has questions as presented in the agenda? Are there any consent agenda items 12.01 through 12.04 that any member wishes to be held out for separate action as presented in the agenda? If without objection, items 12.01 through 12.04 are hereby approved as presented in the agenda. Under 13.01, does any member wish to discuss or have questions on items 1 through 5 as presented? Under 13.01, I would like to have a separate action on item 4. Does any member wish to have a separate action on any other items 1 through 5 as presented? If without objection, items 1 through 3 and 5 are hereby approved as presented. May I have a motion to approve item 13.01 for the resignation of Jean Marie Mazzucaro with regret and gratitude for her service to the district? I have a motion. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Under 1302, does any member wish to discuss or have questions on items 6 through 103 and A through H as presented? Under 1302, does any member wish to have a separate action on items 6 through 103 and A through H as presented? If without objection, items 1302, 6 through 103, and A through H are hereby approved as presented. Unfinished business, Dr. Dine.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's here and I talked about it earlier.
It's okay. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 3rd, the regular meeting as presented?
So,
All in favor, or second? All in favor? Aye. Now to unfinished business. Dr. Dino covered the, how do we say it? Pierce concert. Wrote a national membership of academic senate,
Rotational,
rotation.
that means different members going.
So we discussed that also, that we'll email.
But I would like to let you know, one of the things we're talking about tomorrow is seeing if there are better dates or other dates that work that would provide less coverage needed for classes. So the dates that you have now might not be the final lock-in dates, so I think we need to revisit once we have.
Could I also ask that maybe we see if it would be worthwhile, the principals while they're here, to have one administrator go instead of both during the meeting? Just see how everybody feels about that, so that there is a principal or an assistant principal in the buildings while the meetings are going on. We don't have to talk about it now, tomorrow, just at the Senate.
I
Just
think,
see how-
also for the SALT meetings, we addressed that too,
Okay.
about the importance of having, definitely
Yeah.
an AP.
Yeah. Thank you. Public comments?
Ms. Ortiz, Ms. Lamb, no?
New business?
Tired now, can we go home now?
I know, I'm tired too, I can't read anymore. New business?
it's just two items, and it's not new, I just want to make two comments, because I don't usually. And I don't know if the public is aware of the comments about the chart are, and I think the public should be aware about the biopsy, the autopsy of the bike chart.
Yeah.
Plus, the other part is the interest, my interest is really in the tags.
Yeah.
I found myself walking on the beach for, an hour, a couple of mornings, seeing if I could find something. I didn't have the picture where it was, so. But I think the public should be aware of those things, and it's what a wonderful job and what a wonderful program. And the other thing is to get the pictures of our shop, to see, here we are, a week and a half virtually in the school, and they're building a shed. There were sawhorses, and I'm thinking, how do I buy 4 sawhorses?
Right.
That's
There was something on the patch today, I think. Or 27 East had,
But just,
profile.
I think you have to have, these kind of programs and bring it back. I think the district can be very proud, and I think the gentleman that's running the program, the energy, I would call him the Energizer Bunny. And to read some of the things that he's written and his feeling towards class is amazing, so. Thank you.
Mr. McKenna?
Yeah, just two things. I think you all should have had your newspaper, your board newspaper. And again, Mr. King and I are going to be at the state school boards conference in late October. If there's something you want us to maybe fit into the calendar, to say so, and see if we can fit it in. I've already kind of booked out some ideas, but maybe we're representing you as well. So, and the other thing, I think I was negligent at the last meeting. There was through BOCES, I got something called the Educator Diversity Playbook. And BOCES has taken a great deal of time trying to talk about the diversity of the workforce and the biases that go into hiring committees. And I want to turn to Dr. Dino and the administrative team of this district, because at the last meeting when we were introduced to all of the new personnel, if you drop back and look at the various ages, the various gender, colors, backgrounds, I think the South Tiffin School District, I know that Dr. Donoff worked really, really hard on this, but I think we're better than most. You know, if it wasn't obvious to the full board, I think you need to be aware of it, because other districts are trying so hard, BOCES is trying really hard, but I actually think that we actually, took home the trophy on that one, Dr. Dinah, so I want to publicly make this.
Thank you, I really appreciate that, because it does mean a lot to all of us. And I think the last two cohorts represent what we've been trying to do, so I appreciate that.
Does anybody have anything else?
I actually do, and I'm gonna put Ms. Boccia on the spot. Mr. McKenna reminded me, when the calendar went out to parents, we found, going through it, that we promised some of our local churches that we wouldn't have events on a Wednesday night. And somehow through avoiding conflicts or something on the calendar, it ended up in an elementary concert as a Wednesday night in December. So Ms. Boccia and I are working on trying to reschedule that concert to a date that won't conflict with CCD classes as well. So if you hear any uproar about it, as people are looking through December, we hope to have that fixed by the time it comes to be.
And if nobody has anything to do at nights, you're gonna be the delegate for our board.
Yeah.
If somebody should read through the propositions of reform.
Well, again, I'm not going to the dinner, the dinner's in West, is in,
But you're
The
gonna sit with
Syosset.
but you're gonna sit with your pal.
Okay, I'm gonna sit with my panel when I get to the convention, but there's a meeting for the Nassau Suffolk
Yeah.
School Boards in the next month. I said, it's in Woodbury, it's too far to travel just to go for dinner, and that's when they kind of come out with a slate as to how Nassau Suffolk will be voting. You'll all get an electronic copy, I think.
It's actually been, not that one, but there's been something on news,
Yeah, there's something with, but again, we'll find out how Nassau Suffolk's looking at most of these.
but I'm saying if the board takes an interest, so we can empower Mr. McKenna to work with our feelings on it particular. There's a couple.
I'll filibuster.
So thank you, everybody. It was a long meeting, but we covered a lot of information. I am ready for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second? All in favor? Thank you.
I'm sorry, do I win the
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Win the bet.
Yeah.
Why?
We'll put it.
Check your email.
Oh.
But still, with all that accomplished, it's only 9:15.